Hello and good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is a committee meeting. Today is Monday, September 28th, 2015. Thank you for your patience. We were experiencing some audio difficulties earlier, and I appreciate everyone bearing with us on that. I am going to be acting as President Pro Tem this evening. President Nisley is our acting mayor this evening. We will be moving into Transportation Committee meeting, but before I start, I want to acknowledge that we do have a sign-in sheet that's been going around, so those of you in the audience, kindly find the sign-in sheet. It's a way to save a minute or two, so when you get to the podium, you don't have to worry about signing in then if you've already signed in with the sign-in sheet going around. Likewise, I just want to remind everyone that we do have some potentially contentious issues this evening. It's not meant to be contentious, so just a kind reminder to embrace an air of civility as we talk about the agenda issues this evening. So moving on to the Transportation Committee.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. First on our list of on our agenda tonight is the Ayuba Trick or Treat. This is the Athens Uptown Business Association sponsored trick or treat in downtown. If any of you were watching last week, you know that we voted not to close the street on the 26th. The positive thing that's happened is there's been a great amount of conversation about the closing of our streets uptown, and what that does for or against the business climate. And I have personally spoken to many businesses, and Ayuba represents a segment of businesses on Court Street. It's a member of the Chamber, and there are many businesses that do not belong to the Chamber or to Ayuba. And I just want to remind the public that we as a body here listen to everyone. That is part of our role here as City Council, and it's not necessarily a pay-to-play kind of situation in terms of who monitors what. With that said, Ayuba did put out a vote to its membership. We understand that about 63% of the people who did vote, we don't have any record of how many voted or who voted, but 63% of that body said that they wanted to keep the trick or treat on the 26th, Monday the 26th, versus November 2nd. And I think that also shows the public that there still were some people in that group who wanted to move it to accommodate some of the other businesses. People have asked me, well, why do they have a trick-or-treat on Court Street? The city promotes a Thursday night trick-or-treat in the neighborhoods, and the rec center, the community center, has a trick-or-treat party. And I think that the best way to answer that question, and what I've been told, is it's a way to showcase your business. It's not that anybody makes extra revenue that night, because they certainly don't, because they often bring in other people. It's more of a long-term, long-range way to give back to the community and maybe bring some people to the community and to our uptown area that wouldn't normally come here. Another example of that would be a cruise-in. There may be people who come to cruise-ins that wouldn't normally come any other time. So, with that said, we know that the other key component, and for those businesses and those owners who wanted to move it to November 2nd, they never, ever thought of having trick-or-treat without closing the street. And I don't believe anybody on this body would ever consider having trick-or-treat on our uptown street without closing the street. It's just too dangerous. We on council have received many emails from parents who please close the street, and please, we want to have this trick-or-treat event. There are many people who come in from the county who do not have neighborhoods to trick-or-treat in. So, with that said, I would like to just throw this out as an idea for council. Right now, it's set at 5 o'clock on Monday the 26th. What many people here don't realize is the bagging of the meters begins about 12 or 1. So anybody who would want to park in front of a business, they can't do that in the afternoon hours of that particular day. This is an issue that we have. We need to bag the meter several hours in advance in case there's any towing or any other needs that need to get met. So as a somewhat of a compromise, what I'm suggesting, and is there anybody here to speak for AUBA? I don't believe so. Okay. One of the suggestions that I would make is maybe we move back the bagging of the meters to 3 o'clock and have the trick or treat at 6 p.m. So that's an option. I would like council to speak first, and then maybe we can have administration speak. So that is a proposal. There may be reasons we can or cannot do that, but I thought I would throw that out as a compromise. We know we have to close the street. We know that. That's a safety issue. It seems that AUBA, from what I understand, would have the trick or treat one way or another. I question that, but that's what we need to do. We need to close the street. So I just want to throw that out to council as something quickly to discuss. Mr. Patterson?
Thank you. I did receive the current, or the votes. I'm not going to, it doesn't have who voted for what, but I did receive that of the 37 members that make up AUBA in the Uptown business area, 19 voted. And of those 19, 12 voted to keep it. 4 voted keep it at October 26th. 4 voted to keep or to move it to November 2nd. 1 abstained, and then 2 really didn't care one way or the other. So the 62%, that jives. As a lot of you are aware, and I think a lot of the viewing audience, because I've heard from a lot of people as well on this particular issue, council, the ordinance wasn't to read as something where we're changing the date. It was the safety of the streets, which, again, to open up the streets or to not have them closed on that weekend was what happened last week, as you're all aware. The other thing I want to share is that AUBA, the Halloween, the trick-or-treat, I've spoken to several of the business owners who are AUBA members, and their take on having the Uptown trick-or-treating isn't so much one to, as Michelle mentioned, isn't to bring people in for business or anything like that, but what it is, and I think this is important, it's important to state, and it's that the business owners in the Uptown area also want to give back to the community and to hold this event. It's not cheap. They're giving out thousands of pieces of candy, which is a whole different issue, but they're giving out a lot of candy, much like they do for other things that are going on. I spoke to 2 business owners in particular, and they were saying, on average, from a philanthropic standpoint, they donate anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 annually to organizations such as My Sister's Place, Gathering Place, a number of different entities in town. So again, it's not so much that the Uptown trick-or-treating is to garner more businesses or business in general, but it's to give back to the citizens of Athens, for their patronage, but also just being good citizens on Court Street. So I did want to say that I do like the idea of maybe a little bit of a delay in the bagging. It's something that I've thought about myself. I don't think it's certainly going to change the whole dynamic in terms of trying to get cars off of Court Street in a timely way, but I think that's a fair compromise. Something that Member Pappy had mentioned at our last council meeting was the possibility of having a working group to look at scheduling of events and how this goes forward. And I think that's probably prudent moving forward for all of our events, making sure everyone's on the same page. We saw a snafu last year, which had to do with Halloween. And when Halloween was to occur, and I think that if we are smart in terms of planning, that we can go ahead and do some scheduling to where we're getting everyone at the table at the same time, whether you belong to AUBA or not. It should be business-wide way of scheduling things and looking and community-wide way of scheduling things so everyone's on the same page. Thank you.
Any other members of council?
I would just add that I've only heard directly from one parent on this issue, and I understand there's been quite a dialogue going on Facebook and in social media over the whole issue. I'm a little flabbergasted that we're spending this much time talking about trick-or-treat, because I think there are a lot more important issues that we could be spending our time talking about. I would point out that we don't close the streets for neighborhood trick-or-treat. The neighborhood trick-or-treat only lasts for 1 hour, if I'm correct, rather than 2 hours, so that might be another thing to consider. Shortening the window a little bit so that there's not as much time that the streets have to be closed. I understand that this is an important event for many people in the community, and it's not a decision that we take lightly, because it affects a lot of families and a lot of businesses. But I don't think there's one clear right or wrong answer in this situation.
Anybody else on council? Mayor?
We do have information from the police department that they are willing, as you've mentioned, to bag later in the afternoon, so starting at 2 p.m. And I believe parking would still be allowed, but not after that 5 o'clock window. So they'll start to bag. People could park, but they have to be vacated by 5.
It'd be closer to 4. We'd also discuss putting the variable message sign up so that those businesses that are impacted during the lunch hour, that people would be able to see that, do a better outreach. So even though that they're bagged, they don't have to be removed till 4 in order to come through and have the street closure by 5.
So
I did want to also state, if I may, Michelle, and I know I talked to Wendy Jackness, and she basically is serving, and in her role as chamber into AUBA, she serves them. So she indicated she would provide the information, and that would be. But this was indeed started by the Athens Uptown Business Association. We never had trick-or-treat uptown. It started it. First year was such a success is when we all stepped back and said, whoa, we need to close the street.
Mm-hmm.
So.
2007, 2008.
It had been after
Mayor 2008, I think the mayor mentioned last week.
So at this point, what you're saying is that the bagging would not begin till 2 o'clock, with the idea that you could still park in front of a business till what time?
I would say 4 to be comfortable, in order to have the streets completely cleared by 5. Is it 5 o'clock start? Is that what you had down for that?
That's what AUBA has down. That's the way it's been planned. We discussed 6. Anybody on council have a feeling about that?
I mean, it's already going to. Here's another thing to throw out: if it's delayed until the 2nd, the time change would have occurred. So, I don't know how that impacts the dark.
So, what I'm also hoping with this broader conversation is exactly what we talked about. Is there does need to be a working group. We need to discuss these issues. It affects many, many, many people. Positively and sometimes not so positively. So it is a community event, and we need to get that up and running in terms of. Yes.
Thank you. I would like to add a few comments, and just acknowledging safety is pertinent, and that if AUBA is definitely going to be headstrong and move forward with the regular trick-or-treat experience with children, then I would support closing the street, because I think it just makes sense safety-wise. I would hate to see something happen because of our lack of moving forward. So that's thoughts that I have.
Is there anybody here to speak about it? You will.
Excuse me. Just a thought to add to yours.
Thank you.
Todd Swearingen from Guys in Ohio. The bags that you normally use when you bag the meters, those are probably purchased in bulk. Is there any ability to make notation on the bags quickly, expeditiously in time of the event, in advance of the event, that lets people know that this meter, you have to have your car moved by 5 o'clock? that you may bag them later. But the last thing anybody really needs to do is have their car towed. Then you have the traffic from the towing companies.
Right.
And you irritated people on top of that. But if the bags could be printed in a fashion that just lets people know, it's right there on the bag, no extra signage, except for maybe a variable sign or something, it would just be prudent, I would think.
Thank you.
Isn't there a 2-hour time limit?
On the bag?
That is what there's a 2-hour limit on the street.
Meters. So if you do it at 2, people should know that
They're
either
done by
they have
4.
to come back
Yeah.
and keep the parking meter, which they're really not supposed to do,
Thank you.
or, and then they come back at 4 and see that it's bagged and say, oh, I gotta go and park someplace. So it seems because of the 2-hour limit.
Okay.
You know who I am, but for the record, I'm Barbara Stout, and I just want to say publicly and for the record that, maybe it never occurred to me that what would happen is the street would be closed and the trick-or-treat would go forward. I was simply talking about the date. And as I called out from the seat last week, having participated for every year that this has gone on, I have participated as a business. I know that it's dangerous to do it without closing the street, and I am 100% for closing the street. And this was not about me saving money because I'm too cheap to hand out candy or anything like that. I was just simply advocating for a change in date to help my business, but nothing, no matter what impact it would have on my business, it is not as important as the safety of the children. So I 100% support you in voting to close the street.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay, so we'll move forward with an ordinance next week for the 26th. And important to note that it will have to be an emergency. We don't have the full 30 days, and it'll be, we'll vote to suspend next week as well.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, the next item, we need to briefly discuss the Northwest Bike Spur. For those of you who don't know which bike spur that is, that's the one at West State Street ball fields that will eventually connect with University Estates. We are about to the point of finishing the lower part of that to Armitage Road, and we need an appropriation authorization of about $17,000. Yes.
And just an update on that the Service Safety Director informed me we have the appropriation, we just need authorization.
We need authorization. Okay. So that ordinance will come forward next week, and that should be open fairly soon. Okay. The other item is a miscellaneous item. I apologize. It's the South Side Bridges Rehab Project. We've been discussing this for the last quite a few months. We have 2 plans back from the designer at this point, and that is the Dairy Lane Bridge and the Hooper Street Bridge. Andy, our EPW, is looking to move forward with a new appropriation. And the third bridge, we probably need to put off for some time. That's the one in front of the Stop and Cop on Richland. He's not ready to move forward with that at this time. The new appropriation is $400,000 from Fund 590, $126,000 from Fund 572, and we've already appropriated $65,000 from 220, which was the design and engineering. Any questions on that? Yes.
Can you remind everyone what the other 2 bridges, the locations of those other 2 bridges?
Hooper Street is actually at Hooper Street there. It's that culvert that goes underneath Richland Avenue. And then the Dairy Lane Bridge is as you're heading towards the Dairy Barn past the OU entrance. There are a couple bridges right there, and it is, I believe, the second bridge there that needs to be completely redone. The street will be closed. So anybody coming in from the Elliotsville area to work is going to have to detour, and that is being worked on.
You said it's only a big one.
Mike?
Just a quick question, shouldn't the bridge at the stop and cop in Richland has got to be redone?
So part of the Richland Avenue project was not the bridges. Okay, this was additional funding that came to us through the ODOT bridge project, the bridge rehab money. And the stop and cop bridge has to be redone. They thought that they could do it without working on the surface. But apparently, after design and engineering and meeting with, at some point, they're going to have to.
So we'll have to reclose Richland again. and
Apparently,
disrupt the traffic and the businesses again. instead
I don't
of
know
moving
if the
forward.
service safety director would like to add to that, but that's my understanding.
Stop and Cop Bridge, and even after design, turned out to have the superstructure replaced. So we're pulling it from this project, asking for the additional funds to utilize design as a word and to go forward, and we'll have to submit for that separately. So it's at a future date. Next year would be great. Depends upon how the funding comes.
The director of EPW is suggesting maybe a couple years in terms of the grant cycle. So that was never a part of the original project, correct?
It was one, that was when.
I don't mean the bridge project, I mean the
Correct.
Richland
The
Avenue
bridges were all
project.
separate from the Richland Avenue project.
Just want to remind everyone that if you take $400,000 out of Fund 590, that's going to zero it out.
That's correct. That's the amount of the award from the grant.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing to know that we appropriated, it's gone, so it can't come back to that well. But for 572, it looks like we have about 517,000 still unappropriated, so we're good on that one.
Good.
But we are getting near the end of the year.
Right. We've already applied for Ohio Public Works funding for next year. And then, of course,
Okay.
we'll be packaging it again for the next year.
Just reminding.
And the
Thank you.
400,000 couldn't have been spent on anything else but this,
Cannot be. No.
but this awarded amount for this project.
That's
so.
correct.
Okay, so we'll bring an ordinance next week forward, and I'm done, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pappy. Moving on to Finance and Personnel, which is chaired by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. Even though it says miscellaneous, for some strange reason, suddenly 3 things popped in today, so we have miscellaneous. Actually, the first one I want to talk about, we discussed on Friday. City of Athens has a computer network system here. It's rather extensive. It pretty much keeps the city up and running in terms of web pages, email, and the various systems that we all use here in the city. It's getting old. It's decrepit. It's obsolete by today's standards. It's operating on Windows 2003. Whoa, which it's not supported anymore. So if it breaks, well, you either upgrade or you switch to Linux or something. So we had a nice discussion. Myself and Councilmember Nicely and David Dunning, and got some good figures here. He came up with what he needs and the prices. It's a lot of this stuff is highly technical, and you're talking about blades that have 4 CPUs each. Each one has 4 cores for a total of 16 CPUs all operating in tandem, and there's 3 of them, so that's 3 times 16, so now you have 48, and all kinds of terabytes and so on, and it was a very educational experience. But basically, this is what is needed to keep the system up and running. One of the problems that he discussed was he is rather anxious to get this done as soon as possible because the system is just simply running at its end, it's already at peak performance, and it's not really adequate anymore to keep up with the demand. So he gave us our figures here. What we're looking at, in the hardware side would be about $56,000. The software side, the licenses to use the new Windows 2012 and Exchange Server 2013 would be $17,900. We're looking at a cost of $74,704.71, which would be coming out of Fund 865, which is Internal Services Basic, which at the moment has $114,731. So if we appropriate and tap into that, that will leave approximately $40,026.29 to last till the end of the year. If the administration is comfortable with that, I see no reason why not we should not go forward with this. It says it is a critical system with the city. If it goes down, then the city pretty much just shuts down because we don't have any way to communicate anymore. And that also deals with things such as the labs, transportation, and other services throughout the city. Believe it or not, we really have moved into the 21st century. So, yes, Mr. Patterson.
From the sounds of this, is this a server that's going to give us a lot more flexibility?
Yes, it's not a server, it's several servers.
Bring other servers now onto the one server,
right?
Which is
right now the system is more or less. We have a couple of boxes that are serving it. One is a web server, the other is the mail server. They're also performing other functions that they're really not supposed to be doing to take care of the load that's happening, such as our databases and so on. And they've just simply reached their limit. They have as much data as they can possibly hold. And at the moment, our technicians are archiving, dumping things off onto storage devices. Then if someone says, well, I really do need that information, they have to go out and retrieve it and bring it back so that it can be used. Councilmember Hamburg.
You said when was the date of the last upgrade? Was 2003?
That's the last date of the software.
Of the software?
Yeah. The hardware's older than that.
Do we not have a data processing board of some sort that looks and keeps things up to date?
Within the city?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, that may be something.
We don't have, I know where you're coming from. The county is mandated by the Ohio Revised Code to have a data processing board. I've been before them several times where I worked for the county. And I know the process they go through, the auditors in charge and several of the commissioners and so on. The city is not mandated, as far as I know, by the Ohio Revised Code to have such a board. We have our technicians, we have our people who are experts, and they have to tell us when they need new equipment and upgrades. I
guess if we'd have been doing this yearly, I'm just wondering would the number be as high as it is now, because we've got to go from 2003 to 2015 or 16 now.
That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is if you did upgrade, say, every year, you'd be putting out an awful lot of money every year to do that. So I don't know if you're really saving anything in the end, because generally technology gets cheaper the longer you wait. Now, that's not a good reason to put off a purchase because you need the technology now, but I'm not really sure that there would be a great cost savings if we tried that approach. Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. Will we be able to make use of the old servers as well? Will they still, or are we just getting rid of them?
I don't think they'll survive much longer. I mean, physically, the equipment is just simply getting to the point where you can't maintain it. When the hardware starts to fail, then you have no real recourse. You either throw it away and get new. You archive your data off, and then you put the new data back, the old data back on the new system.
I'm assuming that we've had some failures.
Yes, we have. So it's.
I just think from the information we obtained from Mr. Dudding on Friday, he seems to have he spent time, probably close to a year, doing an analysis of the system and seems to be have made careful decisions about this. And a comment from our service safety director was that we won't just throw the things away. There'll be an e-waste where we can recycle the materials, so that we won't use any longer after that.
Any other questions on this issue? So next week we'll come forward with an ordinance. One thing I would like to ask the administration is can we go 3 readings on this, or do we move to suspend? I don't like the idea of suspending if we don't have to.
I would ask then if we could have well, if it's an appropriation, we're good at the end of the 3 readings, right?
Right.
Okay. As long as there's not the additional 30-day wait.
But this will put us in the middle of November.
Okay.
So we'll just keep our fingers crossed.
I will let you know if something changes then.
Okay.
Okay. Like a hardware failure.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll have to
Okay.
call you.
Right.
No, the phones will go out. You have to use your cell phone.
Yeah.
Okay. Next item I believe our police department is looking at a new patrol car. Is that correct?
Yes, we actually had that budgeted, 2 of them.
Yeah, I see that. But you need an additional 3,100 to what?
4,000.
It's 4,000?
Yep.
3,100 here.
It does say 3,100 this morning at staff, though. It was 4,000.
So the price of the cars went up? What?
Now, this is just to put on the extra what? What are we putting on here?
Well, to package it for the police, it could be the lights,
Well, I just want to know. That's why we
That's
have
exactly
committees,
it. I mean, they
find
can get
out.
it at state bid, but then they have to pay to decal it. Those
Okay.
things all have a cost, and the auditor's office is requiring that it all comes out of cap.
Right. So this is all going to come out of 580? That's the cap?
To appropriate or transfer, takes your action from supplies into the 500.
Okay.
Yep, 580 is the capital improvement.
And that'll bring it down to about, what, 9,000 left in the...
We're not taking money from that. He's asking for it to be transferred from his supply line into the
Right.
capital.
But if you take it from one pocket and put it in another, one pocket gets a little less than the other pocket, right?
Supply line.
Right, so I just want to be clear about that, yes, it will go down.
Correct.
And we are near the end of the year.
Yep.
I want to keep hammering that. Yes.
So
Councilman
next
Patton.
time we do the appropriation, when I would think that we would have the whole cost of the vehicle, including the bells and whistles.
We'll work on that for the next budget, absolutely.
And that can go 3 readings?
I believe so.
Okay. And it's...
Councilman Reisner.
Yeah, oh, yes, Councilman Butler.
I just want to voice support for the purchase of the patrol car, but I also want for us to consider at some time looking at considering the addition of motorcycles, both combustion engine and potentially electric. At some point, I spoke with a lieutenant in California in which their force has been implementing electric motorcycles, which were purchased with a grant. There's a lot of benefits to them, which we can discuss at a later time, but I think it would be an interesting, worthwhile endeavor for us to consider. They cost a lot less, and they're quiet.
I just want to respond to that. Those type of topics come up before the city's Green Fleet Committee, which I'm a member of. When we look at new vehicles, the thing that we're looking at is what is the environmental impact. That's why it's called the Green Fleet. It's not, well, I would get better mileage, or it has more capacity, or it has bigger tires or something. It's, one, does it have a desirable impact for the environment? Are we getting as much of less of a carbon footprint with this purchase than we will with something else? Trouble is, we often get in a situation where the need or what that vehicle must do as an emergency vehicle limits what we can choose from. So that's one of the things that get in there. But certainly anybody who is interested in this topic, we meet quarterly, is welcome. It's a public meeting.
Thank you.
And I highly encourage any concerned citizen or member of council to come and listen to what we have to say. Okay, last thing, from the municipal court, Department of Rehabilitation and Correction. Apparently, we have to send the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction a check warrant for $6,042. That would come out of the court fund 235, which is our correctional committee for correctional action, and it looks like they can certainly afford it. They're not in any trouble at the moment, not with $168,000 unappropriated. It looks like this, though. They want it within 30 days. This is the Treasurer State of Ohio. They want their money. So I believe we better get an ordinance together, and we would probably have to suspend it.
Emergency.
Well, if an appropriation should go forward without a 30-day. Is that correct? I believe so. But anyway, any objections to that? Any comments from the committee?
They have a lot of money in that account.
Apparently so. No comment on that. I believe that's all I have under miscellaneous.
Anything from the administration? Anything else for finance and personnel?
I just would ask that if we can have on the next committee meeting with the Athens Community Center and its cash flow.
We can do that.
You know, perhaps
Looking
would
forward
be
to it.
allowed in terms of trying to assist that cash flow situation.
May I suggest that before we discuss it as in committee, that all our ducks are lined up, in a row, and we have everything that we need to move on it, all the facts at our hand?
I would concur. I would concur, but I am at a loss because I'm not the one who can identify what funds can be legally transferred or borrowed from, and I also need to hear what repayment plan would be deemed acceptable.
Okay, I get the hint. Can do.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Reisner. Moving on to the City and Safety Services Committee, which is chaired by Councilmember Patterson.
President Pro Tem. I know there's a number of you out there in the audience tonight who've been waiting for this. We have been contacted by Brandsetter and Carroll. I know Larry Brandsetter is here, as well as other members from Brandsetter and Carroll. And given the information flow that has been out there, a lot of it accurate. There's been some misinformation, some disinformation that floats around there, and a lot of, I think, unknowns. And I think that Brandsetter and Carroll wanted to come and at least speak to the plan and the way the concepts, the way the whole study was conducted, not in its entirety, but to give everyone an idea as to all the work and effort that went into the budget planning portion of what it would cost to build a pool of whatever type. We also have the director from Arts, Parks, and Recreation here tonight, as well as several members from the Arts, Parks, and Rec Advisory Council. And then I know a lot of you as citizens are here to speak out about the pool. I do feel compelled to, again, since we are talking about the pool, but there is a bigger scope here, which also is that this levy is all of Arts, Parks, and Recreation, which includes our city parks that, some more than others need to be addressed and improved, especially when it comes to AD elements, as well as Arts, Parks, and the Arts West also needs several improvements. So this levy is all-encompassing in a lot of ways when it comes to Arts, Parks, and Recreation for the city of Athens. That all said, I want to turn it over to Brandsetter and Carroll to at least address the community in terms of the design, and the way things, the way the process went through this.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Mike Carroll's with me, and Mike, would you stand up and be recognized? And I didn't bring this walker for the sympathy vote. I have a stress fracture in my lower leg, 25 years of running. So I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to come address you tonight. I think you're right, Mr. Patterson. There has been a lot of information that has gone out, some of it accurate, some of it inaccurate, some of it needing some explanation. And I thought it might be a good idea just to come before council. And we're not here to defend anything necessarily, but we're just here to clarify. And if I could, I'd like to walk you through just a brief history as we understand it as to how things have occurred. We are placed under contract by the city to do a feasibility study for an indoor and an outdoor pool. The issue being that the city had funding that was going to be coming available, a fixed amount. You also had other responsibilities, other recreational improvements that you wanted to do. So therefore, to begin by saying, what can we get by way of aquatics? What can we afford, perhaps not be able to afford? What will the budgetary impacts of these projects be? And we've done these studies all over the United States, and so we're very well versed in it. So anyway, we had a contract to do both an indoor and an outdoor facility. I think there were comments made contrary to that. Next, we held stakeholder meetings, workshops, and we went by social media in order to get citizen engagement, to get people to tell us what they wanted in the aquatic facility. Again, a very standard procedure and process that we use, whether it's with aquatics or park systems in general. And it's been for 20 years, we've had real good success with the process. Then on first part of April, we submitted a first draft report. And that draft report was to be reviewed. It was somewhat incomplete because we had not gotten all the case study information for indoor facilities, but we thought we'd go ahead and get it out, and so that the committee could take a look at it, review it, and ask questions. During that time between April and June, then, we essentially finished the report, took the comments that were made, and we submitted a final draft on June 2nd. Now, make sure we understand. So far, we have only submitted a final draft. And what we'd anticipate from now would be, if we get comments from council, we would come back, make those changes, and then we would ask council, and I think that would be appropriate through the committee, to essentially prepare a resolution that would accept the plan. All you're doing is accepting a plan. You're not appropriating any money. At that point, if you decided to proceed, then you could go ahead and proceed. You would have what we think would be a general consensus that you're going to spend so many dollars, that you're going to build certain facilities, that they're going to have certain operating costs and operating income characteristics. So you will see the scope, the location, the cost, and the operating cost. That's all this study is for. No one's asking you to make any final decisions. Sometimes it takes a while for councils to approve these, other times it doesn't. We had a project in Allen, Texas. Construction will be starting in about a month. We started on the project in 2008. And it took about 8 months to get the draft report from draft to final to approval, and then they went through a funding process. So it's not uncommon to go for the community to review what the report has to say, look at the alternatives. Now, we presented 6 alternatives with respect to the outdoor facility, and we had actually presented 2 alternatives for the indoor. The indoor was the first indoor submission was the April submission, and that was a 22,000 square foot building. Then, because we realized that, I think the committee realized that there may not be enough money to do a 22,000 square foot building plus an outdoor pool to meet the needs of Athens, we were going to pull that back. So in the next report, next draft, that had a natatorium of 14,000 square feet. We also showed some alternative locations as to where that natatorium could go. There were some initial thoughts about trying to have a combined pool house for the natatorium as well as the outdoor pool. We found over the last 25 years that arrangement does not work very well, and many cities that have done that have come back and built an outdoor pool house, a pool house for the outdoor pool, and not run people through the building, through the permanent building. So that's simply from our experience. I mean, I can name, City of Cincinnati did how many, Mike? Several? And Brook Park, Ohio did one, Versailles, Kentucky did one. And so that's just a recommendation that we would normally not make. It sounds like it would be a good idea. And at first, way back when, in the late 70s, I thought, yeah, we ought to do that. And then once you get into the operations, you realize it simply doesn't work very well in the long term. So hence we made that recommendation. At this point, in your next phase, we would strongly urge that you take a look at perhaps take a hard look at the alternative of attaching to the existing building and at the same time having a separate building. Now, why is that? We believe that your attendance and your revenue from your rec center will increase if the natatorium is attached to it. Now, there's an anomaly with respect to indoor water. It's taken us many years to figure this out. Haven't figured it out totally, but there's a bit of an anomaly. If you have an indoor center with indoor water, you will get a certain population percentage that will join up. If you have the rec center only, and then add the water, you'll see a 50% increase in memberships with the indoor water. But the interesting thing is very few people ever use the indoor water. But they want it if they want to join the center. I've spoken to people in the private sector, and they see the same thing. LA Fitness, Royce Pulliam with what used to be Urban Active, he said they see the same thing. You'll go in there in the morning, there'll be 300 people working out, and there'll be 4 or 5 people in the pool. The key to indoor water is the programming. In other words, how will you use it? Not only will you use it for competition and open swim, but will you use it for instructional, will you use it for senior programs, and all these things. We've noticed that with the YMCAs. We did an indoor pool at a YMCA in North Royalton, Ohio, just finished it recently, and YMCAs can squeeze about twice as many dollars per square foot in revenue than a city can. So, but in our assumptions, we assume that your recreation department, and I believe they do a very good job, you do a fine job on your rec center, we have to assume that you would operate under the normal parameters of a city. We would not ask your police force to operate under the parameters of the highway patrol. So that's why we've made the assumptions that we have. And when we said that it'll operate at a deficit, we've said it'll operate at a deficit because we cannot find, ever, an indoor pool, a standalone, that recovers all of its operating expenses. And again, that has to be one that's owned by a municipality. Now, the ones that are nonprofits, they operate under a totally different paradigm. And we cannot assume, nor will we assume, that your city staff or your city leadership or this council would come along and say, yes, voters, we're going to operate at a break even on the natatorium, whether the consultant says so or not. I don't think any of us have that privilege. So that's essentially the issue of the operating costs. Well, I have read most of the comments made through the newspaper and through other correspondence that the city has received, and this is not the first time we've received these types of comments. Mike, I'd say we've done about 125 municipal pools over the last 30 years. I'd say virtually everyone on the outdoor side, someone always says, gee, you're spending all this money to build an outdoor pool. Why don't you spend a little more so we can use it year-round? Good argument, logical, but we found out ultimately that's not the case. Because an indoor pool and an outdoor pool operate totally differently. They really address 2 different user groups. About 95% of your users are recreational. 5% are instructional or competitive or lap swimmers. So we found this with the outdoor pools many years ago. They were always designed for the competition instructional group with diving, and you wondered why they operated at such terrible deficits. We saw some in Cleveland suburbs that were operating at $200,000 a year suburbs. City of 30,000 had 3 of them. It's costing them $600,000 to operate. And finally, they turned that around in 1990. So those are the things we've seen. Those are the assumptions we've made. And I want to be quiet here in a minute and take questions. But as by way of where do we go from here, we have submitted the final draft, and upon receipt of final comments, we would submit the final report. So you still have time to reevaluate, and if you would like us to reevaluate some alternatives, we're happy to do that. We're happy to reevaluate alternatives. We're happy to meet with more stakeholder groups. I think we can probably give them better answers than perhaps people here at the city. We do this quite a bit with stakeholder groups. Once we have your final comments, once we come back and perhaps offer these alternatives, we may only be down to one or two rather than the ones we've offered. Then we'll submit the final report. Then we would ask you to pass a resolution to simply accept the report, accept the plan. It doesn't mean that you're appropriating millions of dollars. It just means you're accepting the plan as presented by the city and the consultant. Then, during design, more details will be addressed as you go through the design, because design goes from the general to the specific. Right now is not a time to talk about the color of the water slide. Right now is not a time to talk about the number of steps on one of the ladders. Right now we're in the planning side. So once we get into design, the more details will be addressed until final plans and specs are completed. We normally recommend that additional meetings with stakeholders and the public, if you want, be held during that final design process. We had a similar set of circumstances in Bay Village, Ohio many years ago, and we had an extensive process during design. We're doing it right now in Avon Lake. We did it to some extent in, we did it in Avon Lake, and right now doing it in Westlake. So that's the process. Sometimes they can be controversial because there are a lot of opinions, and at the same time, we believe it's good for us just to come in and share our experience. What we had to say is not, ex cathedra, but we do base it on our experience, and we can normally back up pretty much anything we have to say. I do want to say that with working with a committee and our staff, Mike and Pat Hoagland, this is as good a report as we've turned out. And we do probably 30 or 40 of these kind of planning reports a year. And I'll stand behind our staff, and I'll stand behind your committee and the city staff that this is an excellent report. If you need some clarifications, I'm here, happy to do it. If you want to revisit some things, we're here, we're happy to do it. And we are here working for you, the citizens, until we get something that is satisfactory to your community.
Should we open up for any questions from council?
I'd like to hear from the community.
Yes, sir.
Reisner?
Yeah, just one question, just clarification. I'm a little confused about the part where you say that the recreational part of a pool is used more in an outdoor pool than it would be for an indoor. Did I hear that right?
No, this is regardless of your indoor versus outdoor.
Okay.
The user groups that use aquatics are broken into essentially recreation users, and then we call instructional or competition. Those are more program users. The recreational users are the ones that come and go from day to day.
Right.
So those are the ones. That's where you find about 95% are recreational.
Okay.
It varies from city to city, but by and large, that's usually where it is.
So the point you were making, where you have an indoor pool, you have 300 or 400 people working in the weights and the track and in the community center, and you only have 5 people in the pool. Well, where's all the recreational swimmers?
They're waiting until the spring.
Okay, so they only come out in the spring and the summer?
By and large. That's the reality of it.
I'm surprised to hear that.
Well, I'm sure there are exceptions, but I'll tell you what, and I'll give you a good example. Rocky River, Ohio, we did their recreation center in about 2005. They had 4,000 members. It was about an 80,000 square foot center. We did a $10 million aquatic addition. It had 4 tanks, I believe, indoor recreation for recreational users. We had lap swimming, therapy, and we even had a small lazy river inside. According to the recreation director, and it's hard to get good data on this, typically on a winter weekend day, like a Saturday or Sunday, they might get 30 or 40 people in the pool. So Again, it's a function of programming. If you don't have those specific programs, then you're not going to get the utility.
What happens in the summer? Does it go up?
Well, the summer, I mean, on the indoor pool?
Yeah.
Well, in the summer it stays about the same. We've done a couple where the indoor pool and the outdoor are connected, so that it's in Shelbyville, Kentucky. But I can't say they provide a better aquatic service than if they're separated, to be honest with you. The only time they use the indoor during the summer is if it rains and gets thunderstorms, and they go inside. Mm-hmm. So that's.
So if hypothetically, if the city of Athens went exclusively for an indoor pool,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we now have, the old pool disappears, this new indoor pool is there, we would expect to see a great drop in usage during this?
If you have only an auditorium with no outdoor pool,
yeah,
you will see a significant. You will be not drop from where you are now. Right now, you're at about maybe 15 to 20,000. We're estimating you'd get about 35,000 during the 3 months of the summer, and so.
I'm just wondering.
I don't think if you have only an auditorium, I don't believe that you will serve that many visitors in a year's time. Now, I've been wrong before, but that's just based on our empirical evidence.
Okay, so we would still retain the ones that still go there?
I'm sorry.
Okay, we how many do we have each during our 10-week summer period?
Right.
25,000?
Right. I think it's somewhere in the. I think right now it's down to about 20.
17.
Maybe less than that.
17,000?
Yeah, because of the condition of the pool, your attendance is dropping off.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
And the weather.
And the weather has a variable, and I can talk about that in a minute. Right now, based on our forecast models, and we show how those work. We have good forecast models for outdoor, but the forecast models, we really don't. No one has any forecast models for indoor because there are too many variables. All we can do is say this is the average operating cost, this is the average operating revenue.
Okay.
And say put you in a range where your staff can then meet those goals.
So what you can say is for an outdoor pool, you should get X number of recreational swimmers, but for an indoor pool, you can't say it.
I would say look around the state at other municipally operated indoor natatoriums, and you will see that the driver of attendance and revenue is the recreation center and not necessarily the natatorium, except you will get more, like as I said before, you'll get more users with indoor water, even though they may not use the pool.
They like the idea of having.
Yes. We did an identical study for Bowling Green, Ohio 5 years ago. Same sets of variables. They have an indoor center, no pool, no natatorium. They have an outdoor pool that was getting tired. It was probably 40 years old. We came in and showed them they can add on a natatorium, and part of that was the same program. What's it going to cost to do the outdoor pool? I think the outdoor pool was $4 million. The indoor was $9 million, based by the time you got what they wanted. They opted to do the outdoor. It's in now, and it's pretty close to what we've estimated in terms of annual usage. Another way to look at it is to say right now, say you're at 15,000 on your outdoor pool and dropping, and it will continue to drop. If you're at that number and it's dropping, say you get down to 12,000. The difference between the 35,000 who normally would like to use an outdoor facility in the summer and the 12,000 that are using it now, that's the unmet need. You follow my logic?
Yeah.
So people like to go to a dirty old pool about as much as they like to eat at a dirty restaurant. And so they will vote with their feet. Are we saying not to build an natatorium? No. Not at all. And we believe there's a scenario out there that could be looked at. But right now we don't know what your availability of money really is. We were never given a budget. Not that we're complaining. It's just, I don't think anybody just sitting here at the table right now knows what would be a target. You do a public project, there are two ways to do the budgeting. One is you say, this is how much money I've got, what can I get for it? The other is to say, this is what we want, what's it going to cost? And after doing $3 billion in local public projects in the last 35 years, might be 2.8, after doing nearly $3 billion worth of projects, I will say that process either one of those two has to be maintained. So right now you've got an income stream working with for the next 20 years, I believe, and you've got all the other improvements you want to do. This is just like anything else in government. It's a matter of setting priorities. When I was in the state legislature in Kentucky, I was on a board that did the same thing. And I know it's not easy.
Any other members? Member Butler.
Thank you. Just for clarification again, and thank you, Larry, for being here too, by the way. I think I've stated this briefly before in a previous meeting, but to hear it from you as well would be helpful. Correct me if I'm wrong. Outdoor pools, generally, if they're run well and are appealing, the operating costs can be less, and they're also more profitable because people are spending money and spending time there, compared to the indoor pools, which generally run at a loss.
Well, it's a matter of outdoor pools will a pool serving a community such as yours can and will recover the operating costs through normal user fees. Now I got to qualify that. Not every council wants to put up the user fees that the other cities in Ohio do. For instance, in the state of Ohio, the average pool brings in about $5.50 to $6 per person. I'm sorry, between $5 and $8 per visit in revenue, concession sales, tickets, and other things. And so we figured $6 per visit. So the income that we projected isn't anything magic. We said 35,000 people, it's $6. Both of those numbers are reasonable. Will your budget be $6? It might be $6.50. We do know that the point of elasticity, at which point attendance starts to drop off, believe it or not, is about $8. So in the operating expenses, we also have to qualify. The average pool in the state of Ohio runs 70 cents a gallon. And I think that's what we've used for your total operating budget. And that's how we do it at the study phase. We want to give you a budget, income and expense, that's reasonable, consistent with the rest of the state. And if there's some reason why yours would be more or less, that could very well be. They do range from about 50 cents to about $1.40. Kettering, Ohio, I think, has the highest cost. We still haven't figured out why. So that's just based on our survey database. Did I answer your question? All right.
I think so.
Yeah, I think you'll break even. If it were up to me, my guess would be you'll probably make a little here or there.
In the outdoor.
Yeah, on the outdoor. The indoor, we showed you information and data from several indoor facilities. Now, some rec centers in total operate at a break even. Strongsville, Ohio does. Example. Groveport, Ohio is pretty close. Strongsville has about 120,000 square feet. So it's a big building in a reasonably large metropolitan area. Groveport is only 4,700 people, but it serves southern Franklin County, and there are no other facilities around. So it's got about 4,500 members, which is a lot for a town that size. As a matter of fact, their recreation budget is about $400 per resident, which is off the page nationally. The best system in the country is Fairfax County, Virginia, and their recreation budget runs about $230 a person. That's revenue, that's income, revenue, taxpayer subsidies, and so forth. So, so Groveport's way off the map, and no one really knows that. Now, no good deed goes unpunished.
Good.
I would just like to say thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. And I think, as a citizen and a representative, my concern with the project is certainly not with the report that you all have done, but perhaps more with the process. And as you said, there are two different ways to doing this. One is to say, what do we want and how can we get that? And the other is to say, here's what we've got. And I'm afraid in this instance, by not first figuring out how much money we needed to spend on the other things that this levy is funding, we sort of opened up Pandora's box and said, we want the moon, and now we're coming back to a point where we're saying, well, here's what we can actually afford. And so we've, led the voters to believe that an indoor option was on the table, both options were on the table, and now the perception is that, well, that option is no longer there.
Jennifer, can I mention one other item? There were comments made that there was some coercion, conspiracy, and all these sorts of things. We were never instructed to back off from the indoor pool. And we can document that. I think our submissions document that. And I would strongly urge that you have us go back to the table, if you like, and come up with the alternative that really does meet what everybody thinks they want. And if that's not adequate, then you just have to make that decision.
That's what I would certainly like to see at this point. I'd like to see, a viable option for us. Before I had even moved into the city of Athens, Council Member Kent Butler approached me and said, would your family like to see an indoor aquatic center? And of course I said, yes, we would love that. So I know this has been on the minds of families in Athens for a number of years, and it is something that we want. And I know, that the financial realities are more challenging, but yes, I would like to see that option explored further.
Thank you. I appreciate you speaking to the process of the fact that this is a draft, and people, I think, maybe have gotten the wrong idea that in the planning process that means no more public input, and that's not a truism in any way. Until cement is laid down, there's always input. So I think that maybe some people who are looking at this issue as a done deal and have come forward to council with their concerns, and that's right, is that there is more planning process that's going on. What it says to me that there was so many people who reacted to the designs, and sometimes that's the best way to get reaction, because as I've done planning projects and stuff, it's hard to get people to come. That's why maps and drawings are always good, because it gets people agitated or loving it. And I think that's what we've seen. You put out some hard paper with pictures on it, and people have reacted to that. So that I think that is a good process. And now maybe what we need to do is have some kind of public input, stakeholder input, looking at those hard pictures and putting together what we've gathered from public input on this process, and go from there as one of the things. Because I think some people are feeling like they weren't heard, or they were heard but maybe they weren't understood, or something. Something is a disconnect there.
Well, Chris, thank you for pointing out that our mission tonight is basically to say we are still in the middle of the process. That's probably the reason Mike and I came. We wanted to deliver that message to you personally. Second, we said we seem to think, based on everything that we've seen, there are still some loose ends. And we have, and we'll just continue to include this under our existing contract, we have some other ways that we could conduct some public meetings in order to get some consensus. Ultimately, as elected officials, you're going to have to make the choices. And so, but if you would like to instruct us to continue to have some public input, if we, this document it's not a design exercise, it's a consensus building exercise. And sometimes part of consensus is going through the wailing and gnashing of teeth. And because without that, the process doesn't really take hold. So it's not unusual, by the way, to go through a process like this and take up to a year before the council knows exactly what they want to do. So you're not doing anything out of the ordinary. You're doing your due diligence. Let us continue on with this, and hopefully we'll, within a month or so, could be back to you with some other items. And I would suggest we might want to get with the stakeholders. And I might be speaking out of turn, Paula. It's subject to what Paula tells me. And And if there are some groups that have not been recognized, that have not been heard, not been listened to, we'll ask them, what do you like about what's been proposed? What don't you like? And what would you like to see changed? And that's a much more positive input than some of the other things that have been said.
I'd like to follow up with, I think, some things that I've heard from both citizens and other council people just in discussing, kind of in the store sort of thing, is and for me personally, I'm kind of feeling that I understand that planning takes a long time, and good planning takes longer. And planning can be very painful, but in the end, consensus is great because then everybody, doesn't get everything they want, but it's consensus. But I think with some of the discussion that's gone on is that council's feeling a little under the gun because there's 2016 and everybody was saying, we want to start this so we can have a new pool for that season, and I don't think that that's the best environment in which to make such a large investment for the city.
Chris, can I tell you something from experience? It's not uncommon to have this kind of, this sense of urgency, like do it now, do it now, do it now. That immediately stops the day you cut the ribbon. At that point, the mayor normally comes up to me and says, you were right about this attendance. We just finished one in Frankfort, Kentucky, $5 million. 20,000 people, I believe, in the city. It was getting 1,200 people a day. And they still don't believe we're getting that. And some of you asked the question if there's a novelty value in this. Actually, there's either indoor or outdoor. There's normally not a novelty. You normally don't see, because the programs and all the things going on the natatorium are related to recreation. On the outdoor, on the other hand, you only open 3 months, so therefore you've got 9 months that you're shut down. And so the novelty generally does not wear off like you might think it would. So we are glad to have been here.
Yeah, I think that's something that, even in some of the documents, it's always this kind of hope that it will be open for 2016, and I'm not seeing that's a reasonable date with, having to build it and going through more planning and stuff.
Chris, there are 4 steps. There are 4 steps to a public project. You have to do each one before you can do the next. But all of them have to be done. One is identify a need. We did that in a study. Normally that need is identified through your professional staff. Second is to create a plan. We are not totally done with that, but we're moving on it. Third is to build consensus. And fourth is funding and implementation. Now I tell people we specialize in clients with no money. Generally we do. However, if you go through those steps, need, plan, consensus, funding and implementation happen because from the ground up, from the citizens, works its way up to the elected officials. So that's where you are in the plan now, and it's getting late, and I will excuse myself unless you have more questions.
Member Copy has a question.
Due diligence, thank you for that. I've been listening. And I feel that's what our responsibility is here, absolutely. The money stream is already there. That kind of the cart came before the horse in that respect. Consensus. We have a lot of people here this evening to discuss this who have some very strong feelings, and we've obviously been hearing a lot of those as well. So the consensus piece to me is the most important. And how we go forward doing that in terms of more public meetings or what you suggest as a consultant, I'm all for that. But we have got to have our citizens. They voted a levy to do this. And whether our recreation department or administration or we as council members, they are the ones that voted for that. And we need to make sure that we are in tune with that.
Michelle, you'd be interested to know the toughest projects sometimes to get done and to get consensus are those where the money's already there.
Okay, I'm done.
Member Kennedy.
First of all, thanks for being here tonight to explain some things. And I guess two things that I have or questions I have is, number one, that on issue 8 that the voters voted for, we the voters voted for, I think we have to look at what the language actually said, and did it say a pool? Did it say just an outdoor pool? Did it say indoor, outdoor pool? You know, what did it say? And then when you look at the pamphlets that was passed out to support issue 8, it said our pool is 40 years old. Yeah. And nowhere did it mention indoor, outdoor. It just said we have a pool that's 40 years old and we want to replace it. So I think that, you know, there may have been a misconception that people may not understand what did we really vote on. And I probably would like to have clarity on that myself.
I can certainly chime in. The language in particular in this levy was a pool, and so that's pretty generic. It could be morphed in any direction you want to. It didn't say indoor or outdoor. It said a pool.
We had one time in Grove City, Ohio, where they voted a real estate levy. As it turned out, the millage was only half the money they needed. So they had told all these people they were going to build to do this project, and they didn't have enough money. But we found a way with duct tape and baling wire to get it done. So.
Please don't tell
That's
us
reassuring.
that.
And they replaced it after 30 years. Recently.
Madam President, or Madam Mayor.
I'll speak for administration to also thank you for being here, but to also acknowledge that Rich Campitelli, Andrew Chicky, members of City Council who served on the advisory committee. We have advisory committee members here who have spent years looking at a long-range plan for arts, parks, and recreation. And I think it is that fundamental planning process, some of which has already begun, that led us to, among other things, improvements to all of the parks, as Councilmember Patterson said, and then also the pool. I think we do have from former Mayor Abels some of his numbers and projections about how much we think we have for pool, and it's not the entire 16 million, but more like 7.3. We're still in need of identifying, I think, some of our final details for all of our other improvements, but I almost liken it to a kitchen remodeling project where you start and you say, I want to remodel the kitchen. And somebody says, do you want marble? And do you want, self-stick adhesive tile? And somewhere or another along the line, we have to make those decisions. So you've offered us a lot of clarification tonight, and I think we've had a sign-in sheet too, and I'm interested in other people's comments, and that will perhaps provide you with some of the feedback that citizens are thinking.
And if I may just kind of dovetail on what our acting mayor just mentioned, is sure it can be 7.3 million or whatever that amount is, but then you also have to look at the interest on the bond, so that number continues to rise. So it's I appreciate you coming here tonight. I really do. At least to clarify a lot of what I think citizens how they may have viewed things. And again, this was a feasibility study, and it's to look at how feasible these different elements are when it comes to Athens Aquatics, indoor, outdoor, or both, whatever. What I would like to do now is if the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Advisory Board, if any of the members would like to mention anything, or the Director of Arts Parks at this point. Otherwise, if I'm not getting a nod or anybody standing up immediately, Andrew Chicky.
Hi everybody, I know most of the people in here. My name is Andrew Chicky. I'm the Assistant Director of Arts, Parks, and Recreation, which is over there in the green. He's the Director. My role is I'm in charge of our current outdoor pool, all the hiring, financials, operating expenses, etc. I spend a great deal of time poring over numbers. I spend more time poring over numbers than actually interacting with people most of the time, it seems like. I think I can fill in some of the gaps that some people have been asking. One of the things that council members have been asking, and other members of the public is how much are some of these other expenses going, or projects going to cost us as far as doing parks and different things like that. And I have a packet for council members and a few extras. If you want to look at those, I can hand them out afterward or now or something like that. But the mayor is correct that if you take out all those other projects, we're saying $16 million minus these other projects, it's somewhere around $7.3 million, give or take, because while we have a comprehensive plan that was passed in 2014, has a lot of information in it as to what we'd like to do, and we have 6 key components, things ranging from using our existing resources more efficiently to adding additional staff, rehabbing some of our parks. We have playgrounds that are in bad shape in some neighborhoods that we'd like to really focus on. We have other playgrounds that we've worked on recently, such as down Richland Avenue, doing the pour in place, the rubber surface. We just finished one behind the community center. With all that said, take a look at some of those other projects. It might be as far as our priorities go, if we need to have more money devoted toward pool things, we have to take a look at what are we taking away from? What are some of the things that we're going to decrease? Do we spend X instead of Y on playground out here, or out on the trail system or something like that? Those are decisions that we'll have to make. They're not easy decisions, but we have to be cognizant of the comprehensive plan. It's our guiding document for the next 20 years. So we really need to take a look at that, because we have an obligation to serve all the citizens, whether they're swimmers or hikers or bikers. That's really important for us as far as our mission and vision statement goes. In addition to that, I also have the fact sheet from issue 8 tonight. If you want to look at that, it might clarify some more. You may have received an email on some of this stuff previously, so if you don't want to kill a tree any further, go back to your email. With that, I also have our numbers for 2015 as well as the last 10 years of data, and then some as far as our operating expense and revenues and different things like that. It's kind of heady, but Larry is correct that we have seen a decrease in the number of people using our pool yearly, especially on the admission side and our season passes. Our season passes went down quite a bit from last year to this year even, and I think part of that was the weather, of course, but also people unsure as to what the next step is, and whether they want to invest in what we have currently. We do have several issues with our current pool, and that's something that, at least for me, is very stressful. I spent a lot of time over there patching things and trying to make things work for a little bit longer. We have patches on top of patches at this point, and that's very worrisome as far as, we want to try to get it, I have a duty to try to make it work next year, 2016, but I'm telling you right now, that's a very difficult task, especially if we don't want to throw a substantial amount of money at what we currently have if we're just going to replace it again. So that's, again, some decisions we're going to have to make here coming up in the next couple months. We start planning for the pool season in December. We start getting budget stuff back, but then as far as, improvements or replacements or different things, we don't know sometimes until we kick a pump on whether it's going to work or not. We've had issues 3 years ago. We had a main line of our filtration system burst. We lost 27,000 gallons of water every 24 hours. We couldn't find it for 4 days. This is 3 days before we opened. And the street department came in, EPW, and they made a guesstimate as to where the break might be, because they couldn't find where the water was going. It was just disappearing. We have great drainage in that area, which is a good thing, but it also prevented us from being able to find that leak. And they made the best guesstimate, and they hit it right on the first time. But we had like 4 locations that they had to determine. And talk about breaking concrete before we're supposed to have people come through the doors is a very stressful thing. So I would like to speak also to. We've had this past year, the number of entries was 23,949 people come through the doors. That's including swim lessons and parties and that kind of thing. It's just over 17,000 people this year that came through the gates through regular admissions and season passes and that kind of thing. That's less than last year, less than the year before, less than the year before that. So I do have packets for you to take a look at if you haven't seen them already. I'd be happy to share that with you. I'm happy to answer any questions later for anybody. We have a very large number of people that use our pool in the community, children, families, and that is the lion's share of our business at our outdoor pool. I have numbers that can break down exactly how many people came in per day for what activity, if you want to look at that as well. So it might give you a better idea as to percentages and that kind of thing using what we currently have, and we can measure that out for the last 10 years as far as data goes. So with that being said, that's all I have right now. So.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions from council? Mr. Chicky? Great. Thank you. I guess at this point, and again, unless our former mayor wants to get up and say it, okay? Mayor Abel. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to citizens for comments. We're going to stick to the 3-minute time limit. Reason for doing that in lieu of well, not in lieu of anything, in light of Brand Center and Carroll taking the stage again. They wanted to at least clear the air of anything, as did Andrew. Andrew's got a wealth of information for us to look through as council. So therefore, if you come forward, if you haven't written down already on our clipboard, it might be up there already, make sure you sign in and verbally announce who you are and your address, and we will proceed. And there is a 3-minute warning up there, or the green light if everything's working properly. If a green light, once that light starts flashing yellow, you've got something like 30 seconds to wrap up, and then once it alarms at you and turns red, it is time that the big hook comes out and you get the drug away. All right? Would anyone like to come forward and speak tonight on the issue of the pool? Please.
I do this before my parking meter runs out in the garage.
That's a whole different big hook.
My name is Melanie Shorey. I live at 22 2nd Street in Athens. I am an adult swimmer, learned to swim properly within the last 5 years or so. The only place I swim around here is OU except during the summer when they close. I would like to swim at the city pool longer than that. This year they closed in the middle of August. OU pool was still closed for 3 weeks. There was no place to swim. I won't swim in Dell Lake, it's too filthy. I went to the initial stakeholder meeting. I participated in the first online survey, and the top results from that were people wanted zero depth entry, which is important for people with any kind of mobility issues, and they wanted lap lanes. Those were the top 2 things. Then for some reason, all the surveying got moved over to some other platform. They wanted you to sign up somewhere else, and I never saw anything else from the whole online involvement. The way the survey was set up, you had to enter a new idea. Even, there are a finite number of ideas per pool, but you had to enter a new idea in order to progress to the next part of the survey when it was set up. So I think the whole way the stakeholder survey was set up online was terrible. I mean, how many different ways can you say you want a splash pool or lap lanes or zero depth entry? But it wouldn't let you progress until you put in something that was worded in a different way than anyone else had worded it. I think the whole idea that there will be no programming at a city pool is preposterous. I mean, there's all kinds of programming at the rec center. We have silver sneakers, we have group exercise. Why would that not be there for swimming if there's an indoor pool? If there's an indoor pool, if there's a thunderstorm when you want to swim, it's okay. The pool won't be closed. There won't be leaves and other debris coming into the pool. It would be year-round access. Often in the summer, it is hot and miserable out. I don't go hiking in the woods during the summer because you're out for 10 minutes, you're soaked to sweat. But you can always swim during the summer. In the winter, when it might be snowy or icy, you can still swim if there's an indoor pool. So it offers a lot in terms of recreation that right now the only choice is OU. And if they have a football game, if they decide they want to close the pool for 3 months, at some point they're going to replace the pool. Who knows what the availability will be for community members at that point. The other thing I'd like to bring up is not just people in the city of Athens who would use a pool at the community center. You'd be drawing from a larger area. The tax base might be the city of Athens, but there are definitely more people who need a community pool. One who has hours that are available other than when the university or Beacon School or these other places where people find a place to swim because they want to swim. It would be really nice if the city had a pool that was available for more than a few months, wasn't dependent on the start of local schools. You have great weather at the end of August, but the pool's always closed because the school's started. And it's what? Anyone who isn't a school-aged child doesn't count. I mean, we're the ones who are paying the taxes, not the children who are paying the taxes. It would be nice if we could still swim. Especially this year, the pool still had water in it for a week after the official close before the dogs swim. Why weren't we able to swim during that week? That didn't make any sense to me. And so I would advocate that we have a pool that be available year-round, which would mean an indoor one. Quite frankly, I don't like swimming in an outdoor pool. It tends to get a lot of debris. You're dependent on the weather. We tend to have afternoon and evening thunderstorms here in Southeast Ohio. It's a regular event, and then the pool has to close. And if we had indoor availability, that would mean that more people could swim. They could swim year-round. I mean, swimming is a life sport or a life fitness activity. You can do it for rehab. You can do it, learn to swim. It's something that you can do your whole life. It's something you can do year-round if the facilities are available. And I really think that Athens should have year-round facilities available that aren't dependent on the whims of the university. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peter Hoffman. I'll save a few seconds. I live at 108 Columbia Avenue, Athens, Ohio. Let me get a second here.
I have a comment. I'm just wondering if they can check on our audio on the TV. Apparently, there may be no audio streaming. Just FYI.
I'm sure Scott heard you. Maybe.
Hi, Scott.
Okay. I think that this thing could have been handled better from the beginning, but that's past now. So, but in view of what the BCI people have proposed, I would like to suggest that we tell them to go back and look at an enclosed pool attached to the community center. Put us a design forward like they have for the outside pool. Put a design forward within the price range we expect. Take that and take the outside pool, present it to the community, but make sure that the community sees both. And then ask the community what they want to do. Tell them that the inside pool will cost them perhaps a small levy, a 0.05%. And that's not excessive. This community's been exceedingly good in approving levies. Or if they want to go with the open pool. This is the thing that the community should make. It's not a consensus. What does the community want? There will be division, but they have voted on it, and this is the issue. We want the inside pool. I think there's some support for that. If you look at the statistics that have been presented, there are approximately 4 times as many people between the age of 30 to the age of 69 than there are kids from 3 to 12 or 15. There's a big rand in the middle of high school, college and high school students. I'm not looking at them. I'm looking at the older people in town who will use a pool. A statement was made that you go in on a Saturday, there's 50 people using exercise machines and only a few people in the pool. The pool is there. It's November, it's cold, but the pool is there. I think this is the way we have to handle this. let's go to the public, let's go to the community and see. Make them aware that they may have to pay a small extra levy. On $50,000 a year, you're paying $25,000 a year. I mean, sorry, $25 a year. So I think we need to look at it a different way than we have. And I'd like people to go ahead and look seriously at their pool. The enclosed pool was never really seriously presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Betsy Pardica from Albany Chase Road. I wanted to mention three things, which two of which have to deal with what was presented to us previously. The first thing is that we did know $7.3 million. That, I remember I went to the January meeting, I think it was the January meeting, and that was presented very clearly to us. So I am kind of wondering why maybe we didn't say this is what we have. I thought that's the way that whole meeting went. We have this amount, this is what we can do for you. So I am curious as to why we didn't proceed with that. Number two, my understanding of final draft as a professor is a final draft means that there's slight tweakings before it's handed in as a final copy. And I felt the presentation about a final draft and, oh, you can still change it, might be a little bit misleading unless definition of final draft is something quite different in the pool industry. So I do have a question about that. I was also not very clear what all of those final drafts were. I haven't seen any final draft, and I only saw a couple pictures that came out that I was later told weren't even the real pictures in the Athens news. My third point, and I do have a question about the stats that we have been looking at with the loss that an indoor pool will cause for us if we're talking only monetarily. We can't compare rural Southeast Ohio Athens with Rocky River or Cleveland area. We can't do it. The Cleveland area in any large municipality has a lot of other sorts of pools. For those who need physical therapy, there are smaller pools within particular clinical organizations. I don't know what happened to the YMCA here in Athens, but I understand that 25 years ago it actually was extremely active, so my interest was piqued when he mentioned how YMCA could actually maybe bring a large community back into the pool area. But one thing, my question was, when he talked about Frankfort, I believe it was Kentucky, and Grove City, that perhaps have a community population of 20,000, and they both seem to prosper rather well with the indoor pool or indoor-outdoor, unless I understood that wrong. I wonder if we might look at the stats again and see if we compare the Athens community, which is approximately 20,000, I guess, in the city, plus the 20,000 students, with very similar areas, and take away the stats that have to do with large municipalities that have hundreds of thousands and competition, whether in fact we may turn a profit. So I just ask that maybe those stats be revisited. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Rich Campitelli, Arts, Parks, Recreation Director. As we move forward and work together and try to find an outcome, one of the important things that I keep hearing and I want to relay is, yes, we have been working on concepts. No plans have been decided. However, another, I guess, theme moving forward is what I'd like to see us eliminate is the fact that we only should build an indoor pool because accessibility or OU is always closed. That's the wrong reasons we move forward to build our own indoor pool. It's not because OU is not accessible or they close, we don't like their hours. It's what do we do to make our indoor pool or our plans a very good indoor pool that's accessible to all. So as we move forward, everything's concepts, let's leave OU out of it, and we work together and move forward on our design and our hours and what we have to offer. Whether it works or it doesn't work, we have to make tough decisions.
I think that's where we stand tonight. It's part of the process. Everybody's got to become involved. A certain amount of people here have what they like, well, there's other people who have not shown up or come to us and said, this is what we want. But the more and more we discuss this, the more and more the outcome's going to get better for all of us. So this is part of the process. I want to thank Larry and those guys for showing up, driving all the way to Kentucky, saying this is not anything new. I said it before, these guys have done it long enough. I trust that their numbers are correct. We'll move forward. We'll come up with a good plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie Goldsberry from 20 North May. I'm definitely for an indoor pool, and I've made that clear a long time ago with the, although I have not been able to attend a lot of the meetings because I seem to be out of town every time they were held. I've been swimming for 25 years, and I started it at a hotel. And I still am fortunate enough to be able to do that, and it's very therapeutic. I use the community center. I go to their boot camp. I've been doing that for over 6 or 7, I don't even know how many years. And let me tell you, hot tub feels mighty good after that exercise. And yet you can do your lap swimming, you can just wiggle, you can do R&R. It's all kinds of things with an indoor pool. It's not just exercise. And I think that like the community center has done a superb job on all the programs they have, and given the opportunity, they could do the same with an indoor pool, and I think they could really see a tremendous benefit to the city. To my knowledge, counter to what was said, I don't think there was ever any YMCA in this town. I mean, we just aren't big enough to try to have something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been around a long time, and it would be nice. I wish we could have one. I've enjoyed one in another town for a short period of time, but right now, there isn't a lot for other citizens of Athens. If you are not connected, and I'm not going to dwell on the university, but the city needs to provide something like this to the citizens, young, old. You can have swimming for young children to learn when the day they're born, practically, till the day they die. And I had back trouble. I don't have back trouble anymore because I swim. And that's made a world of difference in my life. And I exercise hard to also keep it up. But I really, really hope that we can somehow get it together to have an indoor pool. Do a good job, okay? And that's all I got to say. I'd love to see it. And I think it's now or never.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steph.
My name's Sarah Needler. I live at 11 Charles Street. I am here to speak on behalf of all of the kids and people that I treat. I'm a physical therapist, and I work with people with disabilities every day. I'm going to get emotional, but I'm just here to support the implementation and the consideration, I should say, of an indoor pool to help these people who live with lifelong diseases and conditions that affect them every day of every year. As a PT, I hear lots of complaints from all of my clients and families that they don't have access to swimming, or they don't have the time to make other swimming pool schedules meet. And so I'm just here to speak on behalf of them to support us considering an indoor pool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie Wolf, 10725 North Point Drive. You know, I think, and I made this point before, the last time we talked about the pool at the City Council meeting, I think there was a lot of confusion about the vote itself, because I think people, because the wording of the levy said that we were voting for a pool, and since we already have an outdoor pool, I think a lot of the voters assumed they were voting for an indoor pool. There was nothing about a replacement pool, and there was definitely nothing about a water park. I think that has a lot of people upset. We want a pool, we do not want a water park. And I think that there's a real misunderstanding by our consultants about the uniqueness of this community and the needs of this community and the expectations of this community. We are, as you know, we're a university town. We have a large rural area. And other people have made the point that we serve not only the city of Athens, but the very small surrounding towns count on us for a lot of different services. So, and shopping. And I think that you're underestimating the number of people who would come here to exercise, and the additional number of people who would come here to exercise from surrounding communities. And I also, I really appreciated your point about how a pool would add a 50% additional membership to the community center. That was the biggest thing I heard you say. And I think that we really need to consider that seriously, because you're right. I can see days when 300 people are lifting weights and there are only 5 people in the pool. But the point is the idea of the fact that the pool's there and the OU pool is closed so often and has such limited hours just means a lot in terms of the huge growth in community center membership, which is meaningful in terms of revenue, and just the fact that we have this incredible service to the community, that a new indoor pool is something I think that would really be of added value, not just to the town of Athens, but to university students as well, who also suffer from the limited hours of the university pool. I think you'd get a large membership from them, in addition to the service of all the different towns that count on us for so many different services.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Jackson.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sally Bayless. I live at 9 Applegate Drive. I have 2 points and then I'll sign in. First, I wanted to say that all this discussion we're having about planning all seems to be based on historical data. And nowhere is anybody saying the population is aging. Why are we planning a pool primarily for children? And the other thing that I wanted to say is that those children we do owe something to. And if we spend our tax dollars on a pool like they have in Nelsonville, which is very fun, we're doing them a disservice because you can't swim in that pool. Our kids need a place where even if the OU pool is closed, they can have swim lessons. There are too many rivers, there are too many lakes around here, they need to know how to swim. And if we build a pool that's primarily a splash pool, they can't learn that. And even though they may teach, I don't know, they may teach swim lessons at the Nelsonville pool, it's not big enough that when you go there, you can actually swim in it, because it's so crowded with people coming down the slide and doing other stuff. So please consider how the population is going to change over the lifetime of this pool, and consider that we need a place where kids can actually learn to swim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
Linda Phillips, I live on North Congress Street, and I think that the idea of an indoor pool came about from not only from before, when the planning of the Arts, Parks, and Recreation were discussing this in like 2005, 2008, but also the very first meeting open to the public, they asked us, what do you want in an indoor pool? So that set the mindset right there that yes, we're looking at an indoor pool component to this. And I want to challenge the idea that a city service has to be revenue neutral. Where did that idea come from? A city service revenue neutral. Do all of the programs through Arts, Parks, and Recreation create revenue, or are they revenue neutral, or do some lose money? Maybe an indoor pool might lose some money. Is there another program that can make money that can offset that cost? I noticed in the budget that Arts, Parks, and Recreation had a $54,000 surplus this year. Could that be perhaps used to offset the cost of what I think they came up with, $130,000 deficit? What other programs lose money there? Do hiking trails lose money? And the final thing, in the levy, there was never a breakdown on what percentage of that money would go to where. It did say at some point the purchase of newly acquired property or newly acquired lands. Is that really something that we're looking at when we can't afford to do what we already do? Then we're going to buy more property that we have to upkeep? Is that a revenue neutral? Is that making us money, or is that costing us money? I think that when I remodeled my kitchen, I had a budget first. I didn't say, oh, I want marble, so whatever my budget's going to be, I'll just increase it by twice-fold. I think that we need to start with, this is what the budget is, and here's what you have for the pool, and then you go and say, how do we create something that's viable for everybody? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Martha Bishop and I live at 30 Courier Street in Athens, and I have spoke a couple other times about encouraging council to consider further planning on the designs for our city pool. I think it'd be wonderful if we could have an indoor pool. I think if it's determined we cannot afford an indoor pool, I would at least like to see further development of the outdoor design, because I think that there was talk at the original meeting that we could have an indoor-outdoor pool, where in the summertime the pool could be open to the air, and in the wintertime it could be enclosed. I think Dayton has a setup maybe that's similar to this. I know too, Bowling Green that was mentioned by our consultants, is a town about the size of Athens with the university, and they revamped an outdoor pool. I grew up swimming there, so I'm familiar with the size of that pool. It's about comparable to what we have now. And I believe they were able to maintain the size of the pool itself and add the water features around their outdoor pool without compromising the size of the actual pool. I think it's important to have enough place for people to swim. I think that even though we maybe can't consider OU's future plans for a pool, we need to consider the amount of people that would come that use the current facility at OU at the times when the pool is closed. And you know, sometimes on the weekend it might just be nice. I'm a regular user of the Aquatic Center, but it would be nice to be able to go somewhere else and do something different. And I have used some of the services at the City Recreation Center, taken a class there and thought it was very good and enjoyed it. And I'm agreeing with others that I think programming could be developed to help support a city pool. I think there are high school swim teams in the areas lying around Athens that don't have a good place to train, that might be encouraged to think about using, you know, our city facility and having certain time set aside, and that could be a generation of revenue stream as well. I just would really like to encourage council to think about further planning and further input, and to have a place that everyone is able to swim. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I already signed in. I'm Karen Cashagano. I live at 11703 Channing Way Boulevard in the Plains, and I've spoken at least once before too. I'm in support of hopefully an indoor pool. I would just like, there has been some misconceptions and miscommunications going on, and I'd just like to encourage everyone involved to try to get as much communication going as possible. I think that has been lacking. I know the very first meeting I attended, very well attended, at the rec center, and they were asking for our email addresses and everything, and I think I only received one email, and I don't think it was a result of that meeting. I think it was a subsequent meeting. So just more communication would be very helpful. I think a lot of us, you're hearing a lot of support for an indoor pool. You're also hearing support for an outdoor pool. I'll go with whatever in the end is what is decided upon, but I would like to see that it's very well thought out first. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Would anyone else like to come forward and speak?
I'm Todd Swearingen. I'm a resident of Guysville, and I would attend a pool 4 or 5 times a week if it were indoor, where I could exercise and work on my health. Welcome to the 3-minute pool poetry slam. Did all council members get a chance to look at the laundry list that was provided to them 2 weeks ago? Not just receive it, but actually go to some degree in depth into it. I would solicit Brandstetter and Carroll to take a look at the same list. There are 25 line items, some of which are solutions to some of the problems that are listed within those 25 line items. And I have rested the past couple weeks and visited it hardly at all. I've only been able to find one flaw in that list of 25 items. And that was a 4 o'clock in the morning mistake. I would invite you to offer rebuttal to those 25 line items. Amongst those is the May 6th document signed by Pat Hoagland on Brandstetter and Carroll letterhead that says that Mr. Campitelli instructed BCI to continue no further with the study of an indoor pool. That was on May 6th, the date of the document, over a May 5th meeting. I don't remember exactly what you said. I'd have to go back to the video, but by and large, you're in contention with what some people allude to as being misinformation and disinformation in these matters. Before your process was completed, you're instructed to stop work on an indoor portion because that would be, Mr. Campitelli, a later phase, as you instructed, which was first news to anybody about a later phase. Second, Athens is a population center of about 27,000 people with the grad and undergrad student population. In your April 9th preliminary draft, you discounted the students for the summer report based on an outdoor pool and what the attendance would be. And then you basically came up with about 7,000 students out of 22,000 or so that would still remain. You included them in there as potential patrons of an outdoor pool. And later on in that report, on I believe page 18, you don't go any further with carrying that exclusion out. You actually bring the student population back in when they're in full session and project what the receipts might be. And yet, on that same memorandum, the student population, the very last paragraph of that memorandum, the student population is now turned from a prorated status. They are consumers. They consume beer, gasoline, have their cars repaired, they buy recreation in this town, they support a lot of the activities in this community. But for some reason, somewhere between April 9th and May 5th, they were discounted 100% except for the permanent student residents, Athens County residents. So basically, with the stroke of a pen, we eliminated 90% of the potential patrons of an indoor facility, guaranteeing beyond any shadow of a doubt that an indoor pool would never be feasible. And yet we all know that these students are consumers. We all know that the local 3-minute poetry slam. One, as I finish up, I am glad that today's newspaper article came out. I think commiserating with the city, or commiserating with OU, is a fine idea where both municipality and institution, university, can leverage their positions to get a much better facility. Now, the politics of that, I'll leave it to council, but I believe it's a wonderful opportunity. Might fail, might not.
Thank you,
and I'll just leave it at this. I would invite you to put in writing your rebuttals to the 25-item laundry list. Because I personally have seen where at least $100,000 of that $133,000 of projected annual deficits can be overcome.
Mr. Swearingen, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, Barbara Stout, I haven't been involved in this conversation up until now. I'm not a member of the rec center because I don't like to walk around in circles. And, I'm not a walker, so I don't see anything. But I know that I would join the rec center if there were an indoor pool. I know my boyfriend would join the rec center if there were an indoor pool. I think the fact that he said that you could expect a 50% jump in your membership really needs to be seriously looked at, because an outdoor pool, even the one we have, is not real conducive to older people. You know, it's a lot of kids running around screaming and yelling. You know, it's not very relaxing. I like to swim. I would like to continue to swim. So I think you should really, really look at the numbers of what a 50% increase in your rec center membership might mean to the bottom line.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward and speak? Would anyone else like to come forward and speak? Great. Thank you. Kind of in closing, you know, I do want to say, I think most of us on council have heard from a large number of the citizens of Athens who have contacted us over the course of the past 2 months. You know, as you remember, this came forward in July, and because of your voices, council did opt to slow down things because they were going quickly. And again, in hearing voices tonight speak out about wants, desires, and also you know, other options that could be available and ways of thinking about things is invaluable to council as well. So thank you for that. You know, and it's also great to hear from Brandsetter and Carroll that under the current contract that we can do some further drilling down within you know, ideas and concepts, especially with community engagement in moving forward, I think, which would be invaluable. Hearing a lot of people say indoor, hearing a lot of people saying outdoor, hearing a lot of people not say anything. And I think that I think some of the more silent voices we need to hear from as well, or would like to.
I don't know if you want to mention this.
Okay, off the pool, out of the pool. I have a couple miscellaneous items really quickly. One impacting our city streets. I mentioned this, I believe, last week, and that is that Wednesday evening, September 30th at 6 p.m., there will be a Short Street closing. When I say short, I'm saying it's not taking over all of Court Street. It's literally just closing South Court Street from President, I believe, and onto Park Place for the Joint Police Advisory Council's barbecue, which is taking place from 6 to 8 p.m. It was wildly successful last year as a way to engage with all of our law enforcement entities and for people to be able to meet and greet and know a police officer by name. So that's taking place again. There will be free food served there, by the way, which never hurts. The other item that I have is in October we're rolling into ADA 25, which a lot of you may be aware, some may not, but this year marks the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. There's the PACT app, which is the President's Advisory Council on Persons Living with Disabilities, or disability programming, as well as the Commission on Disabilities, which is a city entity. There's an MOU where we work together on a lot of things, where we put together a list of events that it will take place over the course of the month of October. The first one, I do want to make sure this comes out. The remainders, they will kind of roll out across time. But October 6th, the location is going to be Howard Park, right across from the Schoonover building. College of Communications is the celebration kickoff, the series kickoff, which will be President McDavis and Mayor Paul Weil will be giving a brief presentation. It's at noon, from noon to 1 o'clock, to talk about where ADA has come from, where it is right now, and I think most importantly to talk about the long road that we have ahead of us still to make our community and the nation accessible and inclusive to all. There will also be a digital accessibilities training series. It's going to take place on October 6th from 1 to 3 p.m. in Alden Library. And one more that I want to mention quickly, which is going to be the Career and Leadership Development Overview and Career Coaching, which is October 8th at 12 p.m. at the Student Accessibility Services. So there's a lot of things, you know, I could go on and on. There's several events. There's almost an event daily throughout the month of October to get people, you know, to understand different programs that are out there, as well as the need for inclusion and accessibility. And that's all that I have.
Thank you. Any other comments from executive branch? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for participating this evening and being a part of this discussion and committee meeting. We are adjourned at around 9:16 p.m. Thank you.